Okay, we're here with Microsoft IT evangelist Matt Hester. How you doing, Matt?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic.
What's new?
Oh, what's new? Well, first off, what's new? Most of you knew. Yeah, what's new with me? First off, what's new is everybody knew in January of last year I got published for the first time, Windows Server 2008 R2 Instant Reference. But now I have another book coming out in May. So what's new with me is I'm done writing, done copy editing, done all that, but it'll be coming out hopefully I think May 16th or 17th. Automating Windows Server 2008 R2 with PowerShell. And I wrote it with Sarah Dukevich here in Cleveland. She's a local C# MVP. Her and I took an approach from an IT pro perspective to PowerShell and really wrote a book that people can, from day one, start using and leveraging PowerShell.
You know, I think a lot of people don't tap into PowerShell like they could or should.
No, and they don't, and that's why I wanted to write the book. There's lots of books out there, but they're really geared to developers. There's a couple that kind of try to get in the middle ground to work with it. But what I found is that when I talk to audiences and we talk around tech, like I'm here talking about cloud technologies here in Cleveland today, they don't know a lot about PowerShell. And I know it's a powerful utility. I've used it in the past. I use it to build my demo environment. So we wrote the book kind of geared to that, hey, this is something you can use to save you time.
Just like PowerShell is kind of almost a well-kept secret, you can't get away from the cloud. The cloud, whatever that means, is ubiquitous. You hear it everywhere in business magazines and everywhere. But first of all, how would you define the cloud in general?
How would I define the cloud? It's a great way to look at computing power. First off, it's on self-service. You want 100 computers, the cloud can provide you that 100 from a computer. If you need more storage, cloud can help you provide it. It's self-service based on what your application needs are going to be. But also, more importantly, the cloud gives us ubiquitous network access, so we can actually access our data from any time, anywhere. As long as we have an internet connection, we're going to be able to access our data, and that even enables, especially if you're looking at web applications running in the cloud, enables great scenarios like running on any device. And if we have a browser on that device, we're going to be able to get to it. You also get what is called elasticity. And what this means is that you can grow and shrink the cloud to meet the demands of your business. As IT professionals, one of the great things, we have to be Kreskin when we forecast capacity versus demand. And the great thing about this, we get to buy a lot of great hardware that has a lot of power. Like my laptop here, you know, that has 16 gigs of RAM, quad-core processor, solid-state hard drive, and it's for me to do my job. Now, I love the box, but think about the ability to do things that we can do in a virtualized world on this system. I can do a lot. And I had to forecast for that. I had to buy this laptop just to do certain things. Well, what if all of a sudden I have an application that needs 20 gigs of memory? What does Matt get? A brand new laptop. While I like getting a brand new laptop, the cloud is kind of the opposite. Let's not buy new hardware. Let's just turn a dial and crank up that server capacity to meet that new capacity demand. Because what happens after I get done doing all those demos at 20 gig? Well, now my server's not going to be used as much as it can be. I'm sure I'll find a use for it, but the point is that's what happens in IT world. So what we allow us to do is, because if you under forecast, if demand is more than what you have capacity for, that's what I like. You know, I jokingly say it's a career-limiting move because your IT and your business is going, we're losing revenue because our IT can't keep up with the demands of the business. So the cloud provides that elasticity of this.
I just happen to be wearing today my Microsoft and my Windows Azure shirt. Now, how does that just coincidentally tie into what you're talking about?
So what's funny is with Azure, I love the Azure shirts, but they're black, and Azure's are pretty blue. So it just always cracks me up. But anyways, how does Azure play into it? Well, Microsoft Cloud really is three types of offerings. We have what's called software as a service, and that's things you consume, like Exchange Online, Office 365, which is currently in beta, and software that we can just readily consume. Kind of almost like a hosted, but it's all up in the cloud. We have infrastructure as a service, where we can actually use the infrastructure and help chargebacks and use that as a service. But in the middle, we have this thing called Azure, which is a platform as a service, which allows our web developers to write applications as if they would run natively on a Windows environment. But that Windows environment, instead of being on a local server or a local virtualized instance, is actually running up in the cloud, which allows them to kind of have an unlimited, allows them to have a scalability for their application to meet demands. And they can write that app. Now, not all cases, but most applications with just a few changes can become cloud friendly. If they're already written for Windows today, can take advantage of it, and that's Azure. Azure is the platform as a service. But when people look at Microsoft, sometimes it's those word association. Microsoft Cloud, Azure. That's just one of the offerings we have at the company with Office 365, with some of the offerings we have around private cloud. So you can do kind of your own Azure in-house. our offerings are a lot bigger than just Azure. Azure by itself is a phenomenal environment. There's some other things that might meet needs for other business needs.
Now you mentioned a private cloud. What's a private cloud? What's a public cloud? What's the difference?
Okay, so the public cloud, I could say the internet versus the intranet. We'll be done with the answer to that question, right? But basically what it is, when you go to a public cloud, you are going to be putting information out the internet, and it is going to be out there. You no longer control that data, and in some aspects, you might have a rule or regulation, internal company policy that says you have to have 100%. Well, Azure may not work for you in that instance because until some of the regulations, it may not work. It's just something you can't do. You might violate or break law. So we have private cloud offerings that allow you to kind of get that elasticity internally. So it allows us to take advantage of technologies that we already have today in Hyper-V and inside a System Center Virtual Machine Manager, along with a free download called the Virtual Machine Manager Self-Service Portal. You can actually get that kind of elasticity internally where your end users and business units can actually define an infrastructure. And in that infrastructure, they can define their own virtual machines, all coming from the templates that you give them. That allows them to create that kind of elastic, reliable, stable environment inside of your environment. But it all leverages Hyper-V and System Center Virtual Machine Manager today.
So this is a little touch on the cloud from not only an IT evangelist, but a serial author now. What's the name of that book again?
Automating Windows Server 2008 R2 with PowerShell.
All right, we'll look for that in May. Thanks again, Matt.
No, thank you, Dan.